the height of the Cold War, a U.S. defense radar detects an unidentified object in an impossible orbit around Earth.
The first reaction was, what the hell is it? We don't have that kind of capability.
The Soviets deny all knowledge of the mystery craft.
When you can keep your enemies guessing, you're ahead of the game.
It becomes known as the Black Knight satellite.
October 1957. Sputnik 1 becomes the first man-made satellite to orbit planet Earth. Suddenly, the Soviet Union is winning the space race.
The Soviet launching of Earth's satellite is an achievement of the first importance.
It wasn't just a matter of our national honor being impugned. It was a matter of fear. People were terrified that the Russians, our enemies, had vehicles over our heads day and night.
This became coveted ground, and the race was on.
In 1958, the dawn of the space age.
They were challenging us. I think it was quite clear to everybody back in those days that space was the next frontier.
To guard against threats from space, the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory builds a radar system called Dark Fence. On January 31st, 1960, it detects an unknown object traveling in a highly unusual orbit that carries it around the poles of the planet.
The United States and Russia both denied having the capability to put an object in polar orbit. So the first reaction was, what the hell is it? We don't have that capability.
The so-called polar orbit is a mystery because achieving it requires more fuel and more powerful rockets than were in use in 1960.
I don't think we had the capability to go into polar orbit back in 1960 because of the Earth's rotation and the speed that it requires to get there.
At a time of high tensions between the superpowers, achieving polar orbits could provide a crucial edge to whoever does it first.
If you want to spy on the whole world, in particular the Soviet and North American military targets, being in a polar orbit, a north-south orbit, was critical.
The flight path allows spy satellites to view more of the Earth's surface because the planet is spinning at right angles beneath it. News of the mysterious object under the surveillance of Dark Fence goes all the way to the president.
The U.S. assumes this satellite is Soviet, but the Soviets admit to tracking the satellite as well, which kind of gives the indication that neither superpower seems to know whose it is.
Only 2 countries on Earth are capable of putting something into Earth orbit, and neither admits responsibility. The mystery gives rise to a rumor that what Dark Fence has detected is actually a legendary UFO first encountered in 1899 by inventor Nikola Tesla.
It becomes known as the Black Knight satellite.
Well, the Black Knight tradition is that there's a spacecraft traveling around Earth that was left there by an ancient civilization.
A possible answer to the mystery comes when the U.S. Air Force and the CIA make an astonishing announcement.
We did have a satellite that was in polar orbit, and the Navy was tracking a piece of the casing from that rocket launch vehicle.
The admission that they have put a series of satellites into polar orbit reveals the existence of a clandestine space program more ambitious than any of the publicized missions.
This is 1959, and the United States has just put a satellite into polar orbit. That's quite a significant accomplishment.
They claim the satellite is part of something called the Discoverer program. But the true purpose of the mysterious satellite remains secret for another 35 years.
The Discoverer satellites are actually a cover story for the CIA's Corona spy satellite project, which are replacing the U-2 spy planes to get reconnaissance pictures over the Soviet Union.
The mission covered areas never previously reached, and a new age of technical intelligence had begun.
The Corona satellite spacecraft would be taking photographs of other countries, and then canisters of film dropped down to Earth to be retrieved by the United States.
This one mission yielded more photographic area coverage than the total of all U-2 missions over the Soviet Union.
The mystery of the unidentified craft that spooked both superpowers in 1960 might be solved. But the revelation has not put an end to sightings of the so-called Black Knight.
The truth is, no one knows what's out there.
a California murder investigation hits a dead end.
We don't have a murder weapon. We don't have the body. We don't have his vehicle where she was supposedly shot.
Until a NASA rover uncovers a crucial clue.
The police thought that they had solved the murder case right then and there.
August 1991. The events leading to NASA's first murder investigation begin on a dark road outside of Los Altos, California. Three locals, Bernardo Bass, Don Sanchez, and William Chopsticks Alcorn, are driving down Caribbean Drive off Highway 237.
Car pulls to the side of the road in a vacant lot. Chopsticks gets out of the car. The car then continues on. As Chopsticks looks at the vehicle driving away, he hears a gunshot, and Don Sanchez is never seen again. Bass becomes the main suspect in this investigation.
Bass denies the story put forward by eyewitness Chopsticks.
The problem is that we only have one eyewitness. We don't have a murder weapon. We don't have the body. We don't have his vehicle where she was supposedly shot.
Bass tells investigators that his sister had sold the '79 Pontiac he was driving that night.
That was a key piece of evidence that we were missing.
All attempts to trace the car fail. Just like Don Sanchez, it has disappeared.
We have no body. We have no car. The case goes cold.
15 years pass before investigators uncover new evidence, which reopens the investigation and could lead to the discovery of Don Sanchez's body.
We learned that Bernardo Bass had actually done some concrete work on his property only 10 days after Don Sanchez went missing. We started to believe that Don was possibly buried on the property.
The detectives can't dig up the entire property. They contact the United States Geological Survey for help.
They told us about a new technology that they had gotten, which was developed by NASA, that might be able to help this investigation.
The detectives meet with Robert Cahan at the United States Geological Survey Center in Menlo Park.
They asked me, as a scientist, what imagery methods would be used to detect something in the subsurface. They issued this warrant to search this home, where we would bring our techniques and look below the ground while they were busy looking in the building.